모르겠어요. 해도 끝이 없어요. 더 힘이 더 하면 할수록 힘이 차는데 그 땀 한 방울 떨어진 땀 한 방울 목에 축여줬으면 하는데
물도 없고요.
안 축여줘요. 더 채찍질해요. 더 힘든 고난을 더 채찍해요. 아유 생각만 하고 아유 어지러워. 아유 거기는 뭐 가면 안 돼요. 누구든지 그 길을 가면 안 돼요. 누가 때려먹는 것도 아니고 저절로 채찍질하는 것도 아니고 발을 옮기려고 하니까 사지가 벌벌 떨리고 발길을 막아요. 쭉 빨려 들어가면서부터 아유 꼬만 생각해도 신겨워요. 제 직구는 못 살아요. 이 세상에서. 나 통감했어요. 난 사실 예수님도 그렇게 믿지 않았던 사람이었고 몰랐던 사람이었지만은 세상 싫어하는 듯이 지면 안 돼요. 겉으로 믿고 말로만 믿으면 소용없어요. 진짜 믿어야 돼요. 진짜 믿고 하나님 꼭 주셔야 돼요. 그 사람은 영원히 천당을 갈 수 있어요. 아이고 지금도 생각 막 떨려요. 그러니 어떻게 살겠습니까? 응? 하나님을 믿어야지. 천당문은 좁아요. 다 막 천당이 그냥 뭐 아무나 들락거리는 문이 아니에요. 지옥은 누구나 가기 쉬워요. 누구나 지옥은 가기 쉬워요. 나는 그 헛된 길 지옥은 싫어요. 아유 나 지옥은 싫어요. 나는 죽어도 하나님만 믿고 의지하겠습니다.
이 땅에서 그 성도님께서 예수 믿기 전이나 살으면서 행했던 모든 죄를 숨김없이 다 알고 있었나요?
네, 알고 있지.
그거에 대해서 좀 잠깐 말씀해 보실래요? 얼마나?
저는 팀이 가서 쏘겠어요. 잘했다고. 그런데 그 길로 인도 안 하더라고요. 너 죄는 내가 할 것이다. 그 길을 가려고 하니까 안 가져요. 자동으로 막혀요. 그래서 고난을 받고 왔어요. 같이 부족한 사람도 다 하나님 믿고 잘했다고 했는데 같은 길로 안 가더라고요.
하나님 세상 갈 때 잘 믿고 했다는 사람들도 천국 안 가는 사람이 있더라고요.
예, 같이 나쁜 지옥으로 가더라고요. 절대 바르게 믿으라는 거. 하나님 곁에 가려면 꼭 하나님 믿고 거짓 없이 진실로 하나님 믿으라는 거. 그 말 하고 싶어요. 나 꼭 하나님만 믿고 의지하겠습니다. 절대 헛된 정신을 가지고 안 됩니다. 꼭 하나님 믿어야 됩니다.
The majority of reported near-death experiences are pleasant, peaceful events filled with light and love. But this was not the case for Howard Storm, who believes he literally went to hell and back and lived to tell the tale. Prior to his near-death experience, Howard Storm had always considered himself to be a free thinker. He was also an avowed atheist. To him, belief in God was absurd. But all that changed during a trip to Paris in 1985. Howard and his wife Beverly were getting ready to return home when he began having horrible stomach pains.
Here, would you lie down?
Storm was diagnosed with a perforation in his small intestine. He was told his condition was urgent and he would require surgery within the hour. But that's not what happened. The hours ticked by. Howard and his frightened wife, who spoke no French, could not understand why he'd not yet been taken into surgery. The agony of his condition weakened Howard. Knowing death was near, he said goodbye to his wife and slipped into oblivion.
When I opened my eyes, I saw that I was standing next to my bed, and it seemed impossible because I had been dying just moments before. Then I saw Beverly, my wife, sitting in the chair opposite me on the other side of the bed, and I tried to talk to her.
Everything's okay, I'm here. We can go.
But she acted like she couldn't see me or hear me. So I yelled and screamed at her.
Honey, can you hear me?
Nothing happened. Here I was feeling like I was more alive than I'd ever felt in my life, and she ignored me as if I wasn't there. And then I heard voices calling me from outside the room. These people outside the room were saying, "Hurry up, come with us. We've been waiting for you a long time."
Who are you?
I kept asking them who they were, but they were getting very insistent that I had to come with them. So I left, assuming that they were taking me to have my operation. I followed these people who had surrounded me, were leading me into this ever-thickening fog and darkness. I became very afraid, but they insisted that I just go a little bit further into this encircling darkness. They started to push and pull at me, yelling and screaming at me, and I fought back as hard as I could. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds or thousands. I couldn't tell because it was so dark. To my horror and disgust, they were tearing me apart, gnawing and clawing at me, consuming me. They were laughing and taunting me, and the more they hurt me, the better they liked it. As I lay there in a fetal position on the ground, trying to protect myself from their kicks and their bites and their taunting, I heard a voice say to me, "Pray to God," and I thought, I don't believe in God. And then I heard that voice again and another time. I tried to remember what I had prayed as a child, and it came out all mixed up with the 23rd Psalm and the Pledge of Allegiance and the Lord's Prayer, just little bits of them that I could remember. But the people around me hated any mention of God. The creatures that had been tormenting me retreated far off into the darkness and left me alone for an eternity to consider my life. And somewhere in the pit of despair, I thought about when I was a child and believed in something other than myself. I believed in Jesus. And I called out, "Jesus, please save me," not knowing whether he was real or not. And a faint light appeared into the darkness, and this huge, beautiful being of white light came over me. I was lifted up into this being of light, and I could see that all the wounds in my body were healing in seconds. Never in my life have I ever experienced such perfect, unconditional, total love. And I knew absolutely that this was the Jesus that I'd believed in as a child. He took me out of that horrible place that I now know was hell, and we began to approach heaven. With Jesus and the angels that he called to us, we went over my life from the beginning to the end, and it was very disturbing to see so many of the negative things that I'd done in my life. But the thing that made it bearable was that I knew that Jesus and the angels and God loved me, even in spite of the rotten things that I had done with my life, and that I could be forgiven for those things.
Incredible as his near-death experience was, Howard Storm is convinced it was real. And the changes in his life since then further bear this out. Storm turned away from atheism and embraced Christianity. He even went through seminary and became a pastor. But this isn't the case for everyone. Many people who have had a near-death experience take away a message that's quite different from Christianity, one of universal love and acceptance without the threat of accountability or judgment that the Bible teaches. Why are near-death experiences so similar and yet the interpretations so different? how can we judge the authenticity of messages received? And can we trust the beings of light which have appeared to so many people?
In my study of near-death experiencers, some people report having seen a being of light that they automatically interpret as being Jesus Christ. But that being never identifies itself. That identification is left to the person. In fact, many people have reported having unpleasant near-death experiences during which they see a being of light that emanates evil. Somehow the person knows that this being is Satan. Others have called him the angel of death. And the Bible backs this up. In 2 Corinthians 11:14, the Apostle Paul tells us that Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light, and that his servants masquerade as servants of righteousness. Considering this, the identity of these beings becomes very problematic.
Biblically speaking, you have fallen angels, Satan being the head of those angels, and then there's good angels which are in God's legion. Both of these types of angels, I think, are present during a near-death experience, and thus we need to be very careful about how we interpret what we see during the transcendental portions of this experience, what it means, and the message that it's giving.
The fact that these experiences often contradict a biblical view of death make me wary. This is why I think that some near-death experiences are deceptive visions. Their significance is greatly enhanced because they occur in an altered state. But their message is so contradictory to the Bible that they could be from Satan.
Are near-death experiences a spiritual experience or a physiological delusion? Are the messages conveyed during these events full of truth or filled with lies? And is there a key that might unlock the mystery?
I think what I would tell someone who's had a near-death experience is that it is a powerful spiritual experience, that the emphasis on God that they're bringing out of this experience is real, but they need to go to the Bible to understand what this means, what road to walk down now. The near-death experience is non-directional. It will send you down many different roads, and many of those are wrong roads. And so I think it brings us back to Scripture, it brings us back to the Bible as far as what the road to real life is after death.
In spite of the spiritual messages that near-death experiences contain, or perhaps because of them, many Christians are reluctant to accept them as real. But as it turns out, there may be a biblical basis for these stories.
I think we actually have an example of a near-death experience in 2 Corinthians 12 when Paul went to the third heaven. Many people think that that experience occurred during a second missionary journey outside the city of Lystra when he was stoned and left for dead. And at the beginning of that experience he said, I was in the body or out of the body, I don't know, God knows. And he said that twice. That's very characteristic of the way people feel when they're having a near-death experience and feeling as if they're out of their physical body. Paul, after that, went to the third heaven and saw revelations that he said no man is able to adequately describe when they come back. Again, this refers, I think, to the near-death experience that he had.
Religious explanations for the near-death experience abound, but science is based on objectivity. And in an effort to learn more about this mysterious phenomenon, a number of scientific studies have been conducted. But how objective can anyone be when it comes to evaluating a near-death experience? If one has a near-death experience, won't that experience be interpreted through the prism of their own past history? In other words, do we merely see what we want to see? The answer to that question may lie in a study conducted by researcher Kenneth Ring.
I recently did a study in which I interviewed 31 persons who were blind about their near-death experiences, including a number who were blind from birth. These persons reported classic near-death experiences, and even more interesting was the fact that 80% of these persons reported being able to see things of this world during their near-death encounters, things they couldn't possibly have seen, and things that we know that they did see because we had independent evidence corroborating their claims.
Can the eyewitness accounts of blind people finally provide us with conclusive proof that near-death experiences are real? And if they are, What is their ultimate message? Dr. Michael Sabon believes he has the answer.
I think the message of the near-death experience is that there is something there other than our physical reality. There is a spiritual realm. I also think that there's the message of God. There is a God there. It's similar to the general revelation that we see in the first chapter of Romans that Paul wrote in the New Testament, that the law of God is written on the hearts of all men. And I think that the near-death experience is bringing that to the person's awareness at the time they're in the process of dying.
To date, there is no scientific evidence that would allow us to simply explain away the phenomenon of the near-death experience. Perhaps that's why the spiritual message of a near-death experience seems to resonate so strongly with people all over the world. And yet, the ambiguity of the experience remains troubling. What can we expect when we die? Will we be embraced by a beautiful being of light that may be God himself? Or will we be deceived by an angel of darkness, bent on our destruction? Only one thing is certain. Every day, people are dying to find out.